Picture yourself in a frozen Belgian forest in January 1945. The snow falls in silence, broken only by distant artillery thunder. Your breath crystallizes in the air before you, and the cold seeps through every layer you wear, searching for skin, searching for warmth to steal. This was the reality for tens of thousands of soldiers during World War II's brutal winter campaigns, where the enemy wasn't just the one across no man's land, it was hypothermia itself. But within this frozen hell, soldiers discovered something remarkable, a shelter technique so effective it could triple the perceived warmth of their meagre refuges, using nothing but salvaged materials and battlefield ingenuity. What these men pioneered in desperation has become one of the most scientifically sound cold-weather survival methods ever conceived. The greenhouse shelter, or as survival expert Mors Kochanski would later refine it, the super shelter. The winter of 1944 brought unprecedented cold to the European theatre. Soldiers huddled in hastily dug foxholes found themselves facing an invisible executioner, more relentless than any sniper. The combination of wind, moisture, and sub-zero temperatures that turned canvas tents into frozen coffins. Traditional shelters failed catastrophically because they couldn't address the three primary mechanisms of heat loss, convection from wind, conduction through the frozen ground, and radiation escaping into the night sky. Necessity forced innovation, and soldiers began experimenting with captured materials, parachute silk, and, most importantly, clear cellophane and plastic sheeting from supply drops. They discovered something that would revolutionize cold-weather survival. Transparency mattered more than thickness. The principle was simple but profound. When soldiers rigged clear plastic sheeting across the front of their lean-tos and dugouts, something magical happened during daylight hours. Even weak winter sunlight passing through the transparent barrier would warm the air and surfaces inside. Once heated, that warmth couldn't escape back through the plastic as readily as it entered, the same principle that makes a car interior scorching on a sunny day. But the real genius emerged when they combined this with reflective materials scavenged from everything imaginable. Foil from ration packs, metallic fabric from downed aircraft, even polished mess tins positioned strategically. These surfaces bounce precious body heat and firelight back toward the occupant instead of letting it radiate uselessly into the shelter's walls. The construction began with understanding that, well, size was the enemy of warmth. Soldiers learned to build shelters barely larger than their bodies, cramped claustrophobic spaces that, honestly, modern campers would probably reject as inadequate, but that could actually be heated by body warmth alone. The back wall angled at 45 degrees, just high enough to sit upright, creating a wedge-shaped refuge that minimized interior volume while, maximizing the reflective surface area behind the occupant. Every square inch of this rear surface received the salvaged reflective treatment, creating, in effect, a curved mirror of warmth. But the real innovation lay beneath. Soldiers discovered that without proper ground insulation, even the most sophisticated shelter design failed utterly. The earth, frozen and hungry for heat, would draw warmth from a human body faster than any amount of reflected radiation could replace it. They developed the debris mattress, a concept that sounds crude, but actually represents some pretty sophisticated thermodynamic understanding. Pine boughs went down first, their springy structure creating air pockets. Over this, layers upon layers of dry leaves, grass and evergreen needles built a barrier sometimes 12 inches thick. This wasn't just padding, it was actually a network of dead air spaces, with each tiny pocket acting as an insulator. Together, they created an effective barrier, between flesh and the frozen earth. The clear plastic front completed the system. Rigged taut across the shelter's opening, it made an airlock of sorts, a buffer zone where air, warmed by body heat, fire, or even sunlight, was trapped and kept inside. Soldiers learned to add a small vent at the top, a detail that, honestly, saved countless lives by preventing carbon monoxide accumulation, while also managing the condensation that plagued poorly ventilated shelters. The final component transformed adequate into extraordinary. A small fire built just beyond the plastic front became a furnace when paired with a reflector wall constructed from stacked logs or stones positioned behind it. The flames pushed heat forward through the transparent barrier while the reflector prevented waste, creating a dual wave of warmth, direct radiant heat from the fire and reflected heat from the rear wall, that could raise interior temperatures 30 or 40 degrees above ambient conditions. Soldiers reported the difference between shivering survival and genuine comfort, between frostbite risk and, restful sleep. Today this technique endures because it works on fundamental physics that haven't changed since 1945. Modern survivalists and bushcraft practitioners have refined these battlefield innovations, but the core principles remain identical. Minimize space, maximize reflection, trap solar gain, insulate from the ground, and layer your thermal defenses. What desperate soldiers discovered through trial and freezing error, we now understand as elegant applications of thermodynamic law. The soldiers who pioneered these techniques didn't have the luxury of understanding why their innovations worked. They only knew that comrades who built reflective shelters with plastic fronts survived the night while others didn't. Their legacy isn't just a survival technique, it's a reminder that observation, adaptation, and willingness to abandon conventional thinking can mean the difference between perishing and prevailing. As you practice these methods in your own Fieldcraft journey, remember you're not just building a shelter, you're connecting with a lineage of survival ingenuity forged in humanity's darkest hours. If this forgotten knowledge resonates with you, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles and share this video with anyone who values self-reliance, historical wisdom, and the timeless art of survival. The best way to honor those who survived is to ensure their hard-won lessons never fade into obscurity.